In the massive high-stakes fight to figure out who really is Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, you might think the knockout punch would be some complex bit of code or a digital smoking gun. But nope, turns out it all came down to one incredibly simple question.
So, picture this. We're in London's High Court of Justice. On the stand, you've got Dr. Craig Wright, an Australian computer scientist who's been claiming for years that he's the guy behind Bitcoin. He's in the middle of a cross-examination, and the lawyer just casually asks him this question. Seems pretty random, right?
Dr. Wright starts to answer, but then he just trails off. He falters. The lawyer leans in. With what? And the whole courtroom just waits.
He's struggling. He really can't seem to explain the definition of what is, frankly, a super basic programming term. He insists he knows what it is. He just can't find the words.
I know, it sounds like a scene ripped straight out of a courtroom drama, but this is from the actual transcript. So how on earth did this one little exchange about a single technical term become so incredibly important? All right, let's get into it.
But here's the thing. That moment of hesitation, it didn't just happen in a vacuum. To really get why it landed with such a thud, you have to understand the much, much bigger legal war that was raging around it.
And that brings us to the massive case being built against Dr. Wright, where this one simple question would end up being a perfect little puzzle piece that just clicked into place.
So in one corner, you've got the Crypto Open Patent Alliance, or COPA. They're a nonprofit, and their whole goal is to prove once and for all that Dr. Wright is not Satoshi. And in the other corner, Dr. Wright himself, fighting to defend his claim to be the legendary inventor.
And this is the absolute heart of COPA's argument. They weren't just saying Dr. Wright was, mistaken. They were claiming his entire story was a deliberate lie, propped up by what they called document forgery on an industrial scale.
And boy, did they bring receipts. This right here is the title page of their main evidence, a monster of a document, 167 pages long, that painstakingly details every single forgery they allege they found.
I mean, the sheer volume here is just wild. We are talking about more than 100 different documents that COPA's experts claimed were faked, backdated, or just created from scratch to build this false history for Dr. Wright.
And the list of alleged forgeries reads like a con artist's shopping list. You've got drafts of the Bitcoin white paper that experts said were made years later, spoofed emails, doctored accounting records, even faked academic papers. The claim was that all of it was designed to create a paper trail that just didn't exist. Okay, so with that as the backdrop, this huge, complicated web of forgery allegations, let's zoom back in on that one simple question. What exactly is an unsigned integer?
Well, in C++, which is the programming language Bitcoin was written in, this is about as basic as it gets. An unsigned integer is just a whole number that can't be negative. That's it. It starts at 0 and only goes up.
A perfect way to think about it, it's just like the odometer in your car. It counts the miles you've driven forward, right? It can say 0, it can say 100,000, but it can never, ever show you negative 10 miles.
So that's the crucial difference. A normal or signed integer can be negative, positive, or 0, kind of like your bank account. But an unsigned integer, nope, it's a one-way street into positive territory. It is programming 101.
Okay, so we've established it's a simple concept. But why did this matter so much in this trial? Well, it's because of how often the real Satoshi Nakamoto used this exact term.
So if you go and search through the original Bitcoin source code, you'll find the term unsigned int, get this, 294 times. It wasn't just some term Satoshi was vaguely familiar with. It was a core part of his vocabulary, something he used constantly, fluently.
And this is exactly what COPA was getting at. How could the person who wrote that code, who typed that term almost 300 times, completely fumble when asked to explain what it means? The contrast between the two was just glaring.
And then, you're not going to believe this, it got even more dramatic. The lawyer literally pulled up a definition from a C++ for Dummies book, which explained that unsigned means a number can't be negative. And when Dr. Wright was shown this super simple definition, his response was, and this is a direct quote from the transcript, "Would I have thought of saying it in such a simple way? No." So how does this one awkward moment in the courtroom fit into that bigger picture of all those forgery claims? Well, this wasn't just about him forgetting a definition.
For COPA, this was a symptom of a much bigger problem.
They argued it wasn't a simple slip of the tongue. No, for them, it was proof of a fundamental lack of knowledge about the very system he claimed he invented. So let's break down why this one exchange was so powerful. First, it directly attacked his supposed expertise in C++, Bitcoin's native language. Second, it created this huge gap between him and the real Satoshi, who clearly knew this stuff inside and out. And third, and this is maybe the most important part, if he couldn't grasp this simple concept, it suddenly made COPA's claim that he forged much more complex technical documents sound a lot more plausible. It became this perfect, simple symbol for their entire case.
And in the end, that's the question it all boils down to. A judge eventually ruled against Dr. Wright, saying the evidence he is not Satoshi was overwhelming. And for many, that entire complex case came into sharp focus with that one simple question, which forces us to ask, if you don't even know the basic ingredients, could you really have written the recipe?